Chairman Simon Hallett in the centre, Chief Executive Michael Dunford on his left, and Project Manager, the guy who's looking after the development and will tell you all about what's going on, Jon Back. So, shall we start? Let's start. We're going to start asking about the development, which is going to put Jon under the spotlight. And just to get things going, Jon, what's the current working deadline for completing the Grandstand development?
Thank you, Rick. The current deadline is it's as when the project started. So we hit a couple of small delays right at the start of the project, which was around the spoil that was taken away from the demolition. As you will have seen, there are now thousands of tons of spoil that have been taken away from the Home Park site. And despite some pretty intrusive surveys at the start, some of that soil was contaminated, mostly with heavy materials. So that knocked us back a couple of weeks. But we are quietly confident that we're going to pick up on those weeks. So our deadline remains September 2019.
Thanks, Jon. I should have said also, if you have got some questions, can you put your hand up and then I'll bring this microphone round to you. We do need, even if you've got the best voice in Plymouth, we do need to hear you because we're recording it for iFollow and YouTube.
On the development, there's people saying about premium seats. Are these going to be premium in prices or just the actual position of the seats are going to be in premium position? So what I'm saying is that the season tickets for those seats are they going to be more than the other seats in the stadium?
Yes. The situation as far as the grandstand's concerned, you'll know better than I do. The original 2,000 seats in the upper tier. And we've made a commitment, which we don't break a promise on this one, that existing season ticket holders who've moved over to the Lyndhurst will get the opportunity to come in and see us personally, and they'll be able to have the seat closest to where they are now. We're not playing ducks and drakes with that. There will be some premium seats in that stand, but the majority, I think it's 360 seats, are on the lower tier of the seating. But yes, you would expect them by virtue of the name premium seats, because when you buy a premium seat, you're also going to have hospitality and the other bolt-ons to it. So yes, there will be. We've got to fund the project to a certain degree, and the income from the premium seats, whilst it's not the major factor, it makes a significant contribution towards paying for it. So yes, there'll be around 400 premium seats, but our commitment is still there to make sure that the season ticket holders who move to the Lyndhurst, who want to move back, we hope most of them will, then they'll be treated as we promised. But yeah, the seats will be premium priced, sensibly priced. It's no good us thinking we're playing in the Premier League, is it? Manchester United are here every week. But there will be a premium to pay. But the facilities that they enjoy and the facilities that our general season ticket holders will be able to enjoy will be far superior to that you've experienced in recent years.
And would that just apply to the new grandstand? There won't be premium seats in the Lyndhurst, it's a halfway line, for instance. We're
not touching that at all. No, it's only the grandstand and the seating in front. You'll know that as the Mayflower Terracing. Some of those seats will be premium, but there's no premium seats in other areas of the ground. You happy with that response?
Yeah, fine, thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Mike, when we were first told about this, we were told we would get our seats back, not nearest to. That was the agreement originally. You might not have been around then, but that was the agreement.
Okay, maybe I chose the wrong words. If you take the existing grandstand, you've got to realise that was built in 1951. There have been slight changes in terms of legislation and widths of gangways and widths of seats. What we plan to do is we've got an overlay of the existing seats. We will allocate, with the overlay, the seat where the new seat is closest to your seat. We will then invite you down to show you the seat. I don't think we can be fairer than that. We're not playing ducks and drakes here. We're not taking your seats away for premium seating, but that you will have to accept the seat might move a foot, it might move 2 feet, but it will still be what I said, the closest seat to your previous seat that is going to be in the new grandstand.
Evening, gentlemen. Thank you for coming along. A comment made by John just now is probably going to be answered by all of you, I hope. I was going to think of another question, but I'm going to ask this one. You said September 19 for the finish. We've seen the problems that team in the North London, Tottenham, have had playing at Wembley. Have we got, how can I put it, systems in place just in case, because the season starts the first week of August, if the ground's not finished in September, have we got systems in place? Have we got to play at Torquay or something like that? Have we thought about that?
Thank you, Frank. The quick answer is yes. And I think that we of course are planning for all eventualities. But as it stands, I said we're on programme, we're on budget. We have factored in bad weather into that programme. Clearly, genuinely adverse weather like we had last year could have an influence on that end date. But at the moment, we're quietly confident that everything's falling into place. And we are looking for that September date to be for every one of our facilities to be open. But of course, we need to have contingencies and fallback positions, and absolutely we've got it. I think that we're in a slightly fortunate position because of the way that we're doing the redevelopment, is that although people will be inconvenienced and there would be significant disappointment, effectively it would just mean we'd have to maintain the current status quo for a match or two longer. So, it won't have an impact on the overall safety of the ground. It wouldn't require us to move home, and it wouldn't, have any influence on, people not being able to get into the ground. We would just have to maintain the status quo that we're going to have to start the season with.
My problem was, in case you didn't have contingency plans in places, you've answered my question. Thank you.
Any more questions about the stadium development? I've got a few that came in on email. Can I ask one of those? What are the circumstances leading to Simon Hallett's partial buyback of the higher home park land from James Brent, and how will that benefit the club? What will be done with the land?
Thanks, Rick. And first of all, thanks everybody for coming tonight. Really appreciate it. There have been some questions about why we're having it on a Thursday that I think we'll get to later. But I just want to make everybody clear that this is very much an open forum. We're trying to structure it so that everybody can get home and get a decent night's sleep. But any questions are welcome. We're very glad to see such a good turnout tonight. So thank you very much for that. Could you repeat the question, please, Rick?
It was to do with.
It was two questions.
It was to do with the partial buyback of the.
Got it.
Yeah.
So, what were the circumstances and what are the plans? Circumstances were straightforward. I believed and had the board support for this belief that it would be advantageous for Argyle, that's Plymouth Argyle Football Club, to buy the land remaining after the ice rink is built in Higher Home Park. And the question says, why is Simon Hallett buying it? I am not buying it. I have financed through share issue money to be available for the club to buy Higher Home Park. So it belongs to Argyle, not me. Just want to make that absolutely clear. It will belong to Argyle, not me, when we buy it. The purchase of what's left of Higher Home Park after the ice rink is obviously contingent on the ice rink being built. The ice rink is still seeking planning permission or James Brent is still seeking planning permission to move the ice rink closer towards the Life Centre so that what's left is available for us. The circumstances, as I say, were that I thought it would be a good idea to have it for the club, and I was prepared to finance it with my wife's permission. It future-proofs the stadium. We're not going to own the ice rink. The club is not going to own the ice rink. It would, in some unforeseen future where further stadium expansion was required, would enable us to do so without having to deal with third parties. What we're going to do with it in the meantime is not yet entirely clear, but we were just knocking around some ideas an hour or so ago. It's going to be available in midweek for parking for the convention facility that we're building at the back of the grandstand, which is obviously a revenue generating asset. So car parking is going to be important. On match days, I think we're going to use it so that supporters coming to the ground can have a bit of fun before the game starts. So all sorts of ideas are welcome. My wife suggests that I bring my ukulele along, but I think we'll have music, we'll have competitions. She loves it. We'll have competitions. We'll basically make it an arena. It's going to be some space available for what I broadly call enhancing the fan experience. But I think it's going to be open space, subject to safety regulations and the rules of our safety officer. I think we can use it as space to have a bit of fun and attract people to come and spend a bit more time at Home Park.
When the actual new seating is placed on the Mayflower side, has there been any thought possibly to move any away supporters to that area and letting the home supporters go beyond the Barn Park end? Many a time when Argyle play away, our supporters are to the side of the ground, not behind the goal. Yeah. So I think possibly it might be an advantage once the seating's on the Mayflower is to put the away supporters on that side and allow our supporters to go behind that goal.
As far as I know, there hasn't been much consideration of that, no. I don't know if from a safety...
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Simon. But, I mean, we have had a brief look at it. But, I mean, what we thought as a club would be better to do is let's just wait and see what the safe standing debate comes out as. My ex-colleagues up at the Home Office tell me they're expecting a result from that review quite early into the new year. And I think that will probably have an influence on what the future of Home Park looks like, not necessarily in the short term, but then, if standing is allowed at a stadium such as Home Park, and then when we complete the corners, that's probably gives us a more rounded opportunity to look at where we put the away supporters. So rather than moving them once, let's wait for the dust to settle into the next year when the review is out, and then let's make a decision.
Yeah, I just feel as a supporter, when Argyle's hanging on the last 5-10 minutes, and all the away supporters behind the obviously goal, it does give them a bit of a boost. And to put them to the side, I think that would be a plus for Argyle.
Yep. As John said, it's something that I think we can think about when we know about safe standing. I mean, and I just remind everybody, the club's official position on safe standing is that we think standing is safe, and we'd like to see the rules changed.
Yeah, good evening. Just one on the development of Home Park. Appreciate that this subject is mainly to do with the refurb of the grandstand, but and I appreciate that there have been some areas of the existing stadium that have been upgraded, liquor paint and flowers in the ladies apparently. Are there any plans to do structural repairs, i.e. roof repairs to the existing horseshoe? I know for a fact where I sit, I'm greeted with a puddle every time I go to sit down, and it's not through my heavy drinking.
No, you're quite right. There are a few drips coming down from the Lyndhurst and the Barn Park and the Devonport. That stand was built in 2001 now, so it's not a new stand anymore. But I think you'll find that it's got to be a phased programme, because our concentration at the moment is ensuring that, come the first week of September, we're open for business with the redeveloped grandstand. But all of you who around this room will, and you're all sitting in the horseshoe, I presume if you're regular attendees now, will see there has been significant improvement over the last summer. And Trevor Richards and his maintenance team, yes, we can always do more, but we're working within quite a tight financial situation. And when you look round the concourses now and the family room that we created at the Barn Park end, huge improvements. Yes, we need to maintain that stand, and the roof is a prime issue that will be addressed very shortly, not immediately, but shortly. You would have noticed now that the TV gantry has moved across from the grandstand side to the other side. So that in the configuration, when you're watching the video now of the game, to me it doesn't look like home park. It will eventually. But yes, we want to continue to improve on and off the field and invest wisely in projects which enhance everybody's visit to home park. We're an entertainments industry. Now, don't laugh at that, please. Don't laugh at that. We are an entertainments industry. We want people to come along here and have some fun and enjoy the football in decent facilities. We want to attract new supporters, but we'll never forget, we want for you, our loyal supporters, to come and feel part of it. It's your club. And there will be a phased programme of maintenance, which is sensible, in line with our financial capability, because we've got, there's a team to function as well. There's, the operational cost of the club, if you look at a team in this division, are quite considerable. And on gates of 9,400, that can be quite challenging. But these are reasons, these aren't excuses. But there will be a phased programme of maintenance. But I do think, and I'd like to place on record our thanks to Trevor Richards and his team for the excellent work they carried out in the summer, particularly in the concourses, and Jamie Absley, our marketing manager, who came up with some superb ideas. But that's work in progress. It won't stop. And hopefully by the time next summer, yes, if you're in the grandstand, you'll stand back in amazement, hopefully, and see what's happened. But we will not forget the 13,000 seats that we've got in the horseshoe, because they are equally important to us.
Thank you, Michael. I've got two questions here, which should probably be rolled into one. It's about the roof on the new development and the existence of the pillars. The question is the design going ahead with pillars, and what would the cost difference be between that and a non-pillar roof?
Thank you, Rick. The quick answer is that the pillars, the columns in the upper grandstand will remain. It's as you've seen, the roof and all of the intricate steelwork beneath it has now gone, so it's a brand new roof and a new roof design going over the top of it. It's actually going to go somewhere between 4 and 5 metres closer towards the touch line, which is the maximum we can take it with the structural load on the grandstand. So we're maximising the roof space that we can. The pillars have got to stay to hold the roof up. There are two. There's one main alternative, is to having a pillared support to the roof, and that would be to cantilever it from the back, like the other three stands. In which case, it would probably be a nonsense to keep the old stand. On a number of occasions, we've had a look at and have costed what an alternative might be, and I shall pass you to the chairman just to talk through what those options look like.
They look like a lot more money. I think actually Michael passing. I mean, I've heard so many different numbers about what it would have cost to knock the whole thing down and build a new grandstand. Ranging from 10 million to 15 million.
Well,
and I should just add, we thought that what's going on here was going to cost 5, and it's obviously going to cost quite a lot more than that.
You'll appreciate that the project is going to cost nigh on £7 million. When I was here in my previous life, and we looked at a complete new main stand, and we went up to Exeter Chiefs, we went to Worcester Rugby Club, met with Dean and Dybel and all the right people, and the cost of building a new one now would cost 14 to 14.5 million pounds, and the roof construction for a fully cantilevered stand would put on seriously around 3.5 to 4 million pounds of cost onto the existing scheme. So if you were going to do that, you'd really need to be doing a completely new stand. But it's an expensive operation. But the other point you've got to realise is, whilst the pillars, and bearing in mind this is the last stand, I think, in Great Britain, apart from Ibrox, where Archibald Leach was the architect. It was the junior, not the senior, Archibald Leach, who designed the Home Park stand. And it's got an intrinsic value to us. But the money we're spending on it now, we've looked at all options. We've looked at, trying to ensure that the grandstand view is as good as it possibly can be. We've looked at extending it. We've looked at different options altogether. And we keep coming back to the same plan that we're currently working on, which is a sensible one, which will take us to 18,500 seats, which I think most of us would say in the division we're playing in is sufficient. We have an ability, don't forget, that when the Horseshoe was built back in 2001, it was built with a view to being able to double-deck it in the future if we needed to. So that's in the back of our mind, years in the future. But coming back to the question, the pillars will be evident certainly in the top tier, the 4 pillars. But when you go down to the Mayflower terracing, they will be integrated into what will then become the main fascia, looking out onto the pitch, which will be patio doors and glass and looking into the corporate facilities. So the pillars on the ground floor effect will be lost, but we still will be left with the 4 up in the main grandstand. The alternative was a very, very costly exercise and simply not worth it.
Thank you, Michael.
Yeah, sorry. Just one more. The existing fascia of the Leach stand, which has just been revealed now, due to the reconstruction, is that going to be reboarded and covered with advertising, or are we going to leave it on show, just to show that it is an Archibald Leach stand and not an identikit from somewhere else?
We've we've just been beginning to think about this. Have we had an email conversation? Somebody else started an email conversation with me about this, and I obviously like the idea of making it part of the historical legacy of Leach, but we need to figure out what that would cost. As usual, everything comes at a cost, and like you, I don't particularly like seeing advertising all over the place, but we will take a look at it. But I don't know what the answer is going to be yet, I'm afraid, but we should know pretty soon.
We talked about the conferencing facility there. Have we been out to the local industries to see what the optics going to be for using those facilities 365 days of the year? Because if it's going to be part of why we're going to finance our future promotions and such like, we want to be selling that now, don't we?
We will start selling it fairly soon. We've made some original forecasts. We've actually hired somebody who's going to be helping us with much more detailed forecasts, who's going to be starting next week. It's a guy with great industry expertise. But you're right. We need to really get cracking on starting to sell it. Jamie Absley, who Michael mentioned just now, our head of marketing, has already shown us CGI computer-generated graphics of what the new facility is going to look like, and we are working on a presentation both to people buying premium seats and to people using the new facility. We're just really starting to get deep in the weeds next week.
I'm fortunate to go to Bristol City on a number of occasions for meetings, for award ceremonies and all those sorts of things, and the facilities were fantastic. So other clubs are already doing it and ahead of us. Have we talked to those people?
Yeah, no, I think the Bristol City facility cost £50 million or £50 million. Wembley's costing £1 billion. I'm sure it's going to be better than ours. We're doing what we can do within our budget, and I think it's going to be what's appropriate for the region. There is a dearth of this kind of facility around. So, our initial feedback from the surveys we've done of local industry is very positive. But I have to say, we are not as detailed about the business plan as I hope we're going to be in a few weeks.
Thank you, Simon. Any more questions about the stadium development? Okay.
Just thinking ahead, obviously once the stand is finished now, we're looking money to go into improving the team, but Have you got any plans on filling the corners? Are you looking at 5 years, 10 years, or it's not on your wavelength now?
There's no change. That stage of the refurbishment, the redevelopment, whatever you want to call it, is still within the design capability, but we haven't got any plans to do it yet.
Yeah.
Is it something we'd like to do? Sure. If we had another few million quid, we'd have to decide whether we're going to fill in the corners or spend more money on the first team, for example. Money is a finite resource.
That's right.
For everybody, not just for Plymouth Argyle. So we will think about other claims on the resources we have.
Yeah.
We'll think about how we're generating more revenues from the new facility, and then we'll think about it. Would we like to see the corners filled in? Yeah, obviously. There's a whole bunch of things we'd like. We can't have them all.
I think as a supporter, after the stand is built, then I personally would like more spent on the team before the corners. That's my own opinion.
Thank you.
Okay, we seem to have sort of reached a natural bridge here, actually, because the next...
I think maybe the last one on the grandstand.
Good evening. Thank you for what you're doing for the club.
Pleasure.
Welcome. Hope you have a long and happy tenure as our chairman.
Thank you. I certainly hope it's happy.
Yes. A couple of observations. I'm dismayed to think that you're even considering cladding the front of that stand with advertising. We're making a thing about we're keeping a leach stand. As Michael said, it's not actually Argyle Leach died in 1939, but that was the last stand built by his company. We decided to stay with that and not go for a Legoland or Meccano stand. So we really should make the most of it. I've got to say, I'm a little bit disappointed. Maybe it was a cost thing. Did you actually consider at any stage actually completing the grandstand? The section at the bar and park end above the open seats. We've been waiting since 1952 to have that completed. We only had the seats put in at the Devonport end in the 70s above the seats. Having gutted the stand back to a skeleton in the concrete terrace or concrete, was it not a viable option to actually complete the grandstand down to the corner and perhaps add another 300 or 400 to the capacity?
It was an option. The cost involved would have been considerable, and in the end we decided not.
It'd be a lot more expensive to do it at a later date.
True. But we're dealing with the amount of money that we have available now, not the amount of money that we may or may not have available at a future date. As I said before, there are a lot of things that we would like to do, but we don't have an infinite amount of money. So it's all about claims on the resources that we have.
Has anybody looked at the sight lines at the far end of the grandstand? Can you actually put seats right down to the end there and not lose a part of the pitch there?
Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely, it's been looked at, and there are restricted seats at the eastern end of the grandstand, which will not be sellable and haven't been sellable for the last 10, 20 years. As Simon said, there's lost income when we're at capacity, but that's set against £600,000 extra required now to free up those seats and add the additional seats. And as the chairman says, that would need to be £600,000. That would need to come from somewhere. It would come from, if we were to find it from the playing budget, from the infrastructure, from everywhere. It's a balance. Of course, we would want to do it. Absolutely, and it's been debated and debated and debated. But the position is that £600,000 that we would need to borrow and spend now. And the likely outcome to that is no. What we have done though is that we have made it as easy as is possible to do that in the future. The changing rooms that we're building down in the corner there have been very carefully positioned so that foundations, both for the corner wraparound and for the extension of the grandstand, can be built with that changing room in situ. So as far as we can do, we have future-proof the extension, the eastern extension of the grandstand.
Can I just add something there, John, a minute? It's how many people in this room think that in the next few years, if we stay in this division or even went into the championship, we would regularly achieve more than 18,000 average gate. How many of you? Please put your hands up. Right. So we are now left with a situation. We've invested £7 million into the refurbished project. That's got to sweat. We'll be a football club for 30 days a year, technically, as far as that's concerned. But that facility will help generate and drive revenues, which will help to improve the club on and off the field. If we were to achieve championship football, the actual difference in central distribution is around £5 million a season and going up. So by the time we've reached those heady heights of the championship, and there's no I can remember, and you will always remember, not long ago, when Ian was here, we were sitting fourth. We were sitting pretty. But realistically, 16,100 has been the highest average home gate we've had in any season going back to 1961. So when you weigh it up, empty spaces can cost you a lot of money. So I think realistically, when I came here back again 4 or 5 months, I understood the logic completely why the stand wasn't going to be extended. But if we're in the championship and the gates go up to 18,000 and we receive another £5,000 from the Football League, and it could be more by then, 5 million, sorry, then and my maths was never my strong point, but the £5 million extra, we would have the capability then to do it far more now than we have currently enjoy. We've got a cake. There's only so much in the cake. We want to improve the team. We want to improve facilities. We want to keep admission prices down to a reasonable level, and I think we are doing that. We want to attract new people. So I think we've got to be thankful for where we are. A lot of people would change places with us now. And I think, you go back to the administration days, the thought of spending £7 million on any project at this club was pie in the sky. We've come a long, long way. We're not going to make the mistakes we did previously, but I think it's sensible, I think it's prudent that we look at the club in all areas and try and improve it on and off the field. But spending 600,000 on seats that inevitably are going to remain vacant, to me, just does not make sense.
Will the new roof cover all the lower seating?
Not all of it, no. It's going to extend somewhere between 4 and 5 metres further towards the touchline than the previous roof did, but that's the maximum that it can go with the structural engineering of the stand. So we've taken it as far as we can do. When the corners are completed, and as Simon rightly says, we've got planning permission to do it now, but there's no timeline in place for us to do so. But when the corners are completed, the corners will then provide that extra structural stability to take the roofline all the way through to the touchline.
So initially, the lower front seats will be uncovered.
Yep, they will. I mean, the rain is prevailing from behind the grandstand, so that the grandstand tends to, through its protection, forward a touch more, but certainly the first few rows of the new Mayflower stand will be uncovered.
Thank you. I'm going to move things along now, we've got a bit of a natural bridge here. The next section we'd like to introduce is broadly finances, the club's finances. And after talking about the redevelopment, it makes sense to ask this question. What turnover are we forecasting the stadium to make, and when will the profit from this begin to impact the playing budget?
As I said, we're going to get more detailed forecasts coming in over the next month or two from the individual who's starting next week. So I really don't want to go into those kind of forecasts, but I'm hoping that it will start contributing to the overall budget from next year, from next season. As John said, we've got a deadline which we're holding the contractors to. Everything seems to be roughly on line for that. So we expect it to start generating revenues in the next season, and then we'll have to think about how much of those revenues go into the playing budget.
Any questions from the floor? I can ask another one. We had an inquiry on email. Will the club commit to releasing full club accounts on a yearly basis?
I can't commit on behalf of the board, but Michael and I have discussed this. Michael and I are prepared to take that proposal to the rest of the board. I think we need to try to figure out what information people actually want, how much detail they want. There will be some information that will be commercially sensitive that we won't be able to release. For example, we are not going to release how much we spend on the first team alone. So, you may see an expense line that goes overall wages, but it won't disaggregate, what we pay our people from what we pay our people who appear on the pitch. That was just commercially sensitive. I would love to know what every team in our division and the division above spends on their team. And they'd love to know what we spend. So we will not release that, but we are very happy to at least suggest that we get greater transparency into our income and expenses. Can I just slightly go off on a little bit of a tangent here that's highly related? That question came in over email. I know it's something that's been discussed widely. I think in general we have a reputation, and Michael's been around football more directly longer than either John or I. As a club, we are probably amongst the top half dozen in the whole of the league in terms of transparency, and we are prepared to become more transparent. When it comes to our income and expenses, as I say, some of that will be commercially sensitive and we won't release it. But I really do just want to try to resist some of this notion that people are siphoning money off from the club. If there's any profit to be had from owning a football club, I've yet to see any. The shareholders don't get dividends. The directors don't even get their expenses. So the kind of suspicion that we see around is completely unfounded. And I hope that when we show you a little bit more, or if we show you a little bit more information about revenues and expenses, you can see that. But this is not a club run for profit. It's just simply not the case. Every penny that we make, every surplus that we have at the end of the year goes back. It either goes back into fixing the roof, or it goes into the first team, or it goes into the academy, or it goes into the infrastructure. This is a football club that is, not blessed with massive natural resources. It's a club that had very significant investment when we did the horseshoe, or the club did the horseshoe, and it's a club that's been financially straightened for many years. Obviously, as you know, it almost went out of existence. And we've neglected, frankly, a lot of the things that you should be doing on a year-to-year basis. So a lot of our revenues are going in making up for lack of maintenance spending, effectively maintenance spending over the last 15 or 16 years. So, not all the revenues that we get are going to go into the first team. Some of the revenues are going to go into, making the fan experience on a Saturday afternoon better. But as I say, I think we will try very hard to get more transparent about the revenue and expenses over the next few months.
If I might just add to that as well, I mean, as Simon's alluded to, I've worked at a number of other clubs. This club now has 4 shareholders. You might not like that situation, but it's fact. And we wouldn't be sitting here today without those 4 shareholders having played their part in taking it forward. I've worked at other clubs where Everton, they had 1,500 shareholders. And they're one special day. They all sit in front of you, and you can write the book. And I was writing the minutes, so people want to stand up and ask questions. And as shareholders, you're entitled to ask questions. It would be very easy at the moment for this club, who've got 4 shareholders, to pull the drawbridge up and say, forget it. None of you are shareholders. We're not giving you any information. They've gone the other way completely, and rightly so, because every time you buy a season ticket, every time you buy a match ticket, you're playing an important part in securing this club's future. So for as far as transparency is concerned, The chairman now will answer questions directly online. We've just started the fan assembly, which will start in January, again being transparent. I run fan surgeries once a month. I've seen 50 or 60 people since I've come back to the club. This club is very transparent, and we don't mind being challenged. We won't get everything right. No way will we get everything right. We haven't in the past, and we probably won't in the future. But you're dealing, I think, with a board who have no ego and want to see the club prosper. But as far as information's concerned, if we're sitting here in 12 months' time and we haven't been more transparent than we are currently, then I think that's the time to maybe have a snipe at us. But when you've got 4 shareholders, I say it would be very, very easy. And I've worked for Robert Maxwell. And this guy, please don't laugh. I mean, he might be up there looking down on us. But in all joking aside, he decides at Oxford, his shareholders, he's going to have an annual general meeting, which he had to have. So what does he do? 6 o'clock in the morning in central London for his Oxford shareholders. That's what he thought of his shareholders. And it's not going to happen here. Simon has alluded to the fact that, yes, there's a level of information we have to keep private, but I think most people are looking for a detailed profit and loss account so you can actually see where we're spending the money, where our income comes in. And I think that's the type of information you're really looking for. 1 or 2 of you, and I don't know who you are, have an insatiable appetite for detail. Absolutely. The emails every week, can you answer this? Can you answer that? Well, there comes a point where we can only do so much. But in all the clubs I've worked for, and you'd expect me to say this because I've been paid well to do a good job, that there's a transparency and there's an openness here that does not exist at many, many other clubs. So, 12 months' time, see if I'm wrong. You will get a level of detail that you've not enjoyed before.
Can I just add on the 6 o'clock in London for Oxford United thing? We were criticised for having this in some quarters on a Thursday night. And, thank you all for coming. You're obviously the people who would have made it to 6 a.m. in the morning in London from Oxford. The reason why it's on a Thursday night is that we've experimented with all kinds of times over the last couple of years since we've been having these forums. We tried before a match, we've tried after a match, and now we're trying on a weekday evening. Before a match, we had to have it we probably had to have it too early, and people had nothing to do before the game started or the pre-match entertainment started. After a match, people said they had better things to do on a Saturday. We publicised this. We could always do a better job publicising. Sorry, I'm getting on to another question that I know was asked through email now. I announced that there would be a fans forum tonight in the chairman's letter that we published on November the 14th. So I think we can always do more to publicise these kind of events, but there was a suggestion in one of the social media channels last night actually that apparently we didn't want people to come, and I can assure you there's absolutely nothing further than the truth. The more people here, I hate talking to an empty room with my wife in the front row. It's scary. I want to address a room full of people who've got questions, even difficult questions. So we're delighted to see the room full, and we should maybe get the Argyle Trust, the AFT, to say what in their annual survey to ask what day people would prefer. But so far it seems that Thursday night looks like a pretty good night.
Quick story. I was one of the many people that held single shares in the old club. Where's Ian New? I bought it off of Ian New, so there's a story for you. 3 months after that, I think the club went bust. Was that right, Ian? Chairman said to me, even if I win the lottery, he's not selling to me this time.
Hi, and thank you for coming this evening, chaps. and we all welcome that transparency. I hope, given the number of people that have come this evening, and the positive nature of the questions, that it won't be 12 months before we have the next one, because we did give an undertaking that it would be 3 times a season.
Can I just address that, Bob? Sorry, we cancelled. I mean, our goal is to have 3 a season. The EFL mandates that we should have 2 fan engagements, I think they're called, Michael, is that right? A season, and we have a considerable number of fan engagements. We have Michael's clinics, we're planning on the fan assembly, we had the Green Army working group, so we are way beyond compliance with the EFL. Our goal was to have 3. We had to cancel one in August, for which I apologise, but we cancelled it because we were deep into negotiations about the change of ownership and the change of chairmanship. Again, I apologise that we had to cancel it, but if we'd gone ahead with it and then announced 5 days later that I was the new majority owner and David Felwick was going to be the chairman, everybody would have rightly castigated us for failure to be transparent. So that was why we cancelled it. We are determined to have 3, but there will be other avenues as well.
Thank you, Simon. My question was about the player budget, because many of us were worried at the end of last season when it transpired that we were 19th out of the 24 teams in terms of player expenditure. Now, Michael's assured us that we're nearer the top half than the bottom half this season, although we won't know until the end of the season when those are published. I guess with all the amounts of money being thrown around this evening, we'd all hope there might be additional funding for Derek in the transfer window to strengthen our team. Will that be possible?
It will be possible. The issue... So I'm trying to think how to say this most efficiently. The transfer window, as you know, opens in January. There will be changes to the team. I'm pretty sure of that. Derek's working on his plans for both players that will no longer be with us and players that he wants to get in. So January will be a busy month. The arrangement we have with Derek is that at the beginning of the season, or actually towards the end of previous season, we start working on a player budget. Derek agrees to that budget, and Derek does a terrific job sticking to that budget over the season. But we have always said to Derek that if there's a player that you really want to bring into the club and you think the price is right, that we will be prepared to examine it. That remains in this January transfer window. Derek is, Derek likes to stick to a budget, but we'll see what he wants to do. We have expanded the budget a couple of times in the last couple of years, not hugely, I admit, but we'll see what he wants to do. But I think Derek in the past has been able to improve the team without expanding the budget.
Okay. Anybody else any questions about finances? I've got one here, sent in by email. Will any grandstand budget overruns have any negative impact upon Derek Adams' budget in this or any future transfer window?
I'm never going to say in any future transfer window, but we talked. I think Jon mentioned that eventually everything is a claim on finite resources. We've got to figure out how to divide up the cake. For this year, the budget for the grandstand is in a separate account from the budget for all other operations at the club. So this year, absolutely no effect, no.
And we don't have a budget overrun anyway, I think, is that right? Question
for football.
Asked, was there a budget overrun on the grandstand?
No, there's no budget overrun anyway for the grandstand.
Does the budget for new players in January depend on players being, out of the club, or I presume if a player's on a contract and he wants to stick, he can stick. So providing they decide to stick, will there still be additional funds for people to come in?
I don't think I understand.
Well, players are under contract, so obviously there's talk about players going out. Yeah. Now, if for any reason players don't go out, will there still be funds available to bring players in to strengthen the side?
Sorry, so you mean if he brings players in, if he brings in costs but doesn't cut out expenses, well, that means that there will need to be a revision to the budget. And that's exactly the kind of circumstances under which Derek can come to the board and say, can I bring in these players despite the fact that none are going out? Yeah.
So it's not dependent that players have got to go out or we can't get players. It's still a possibility that we could get players in even if players don't go out.
It's a possibility. That's exactly what I was saying, that if the budget needs to be expanded, Derek is welcome to come to the board and make a case for expanding the budget.
Oh.
I mean, he can expand it through increasing expenses or, the costs, or while not, well, there are no revenues, it's all expenses, but, through cutting expenses. Sorry, I'm now gibbering.
All right, thank
Yeah.
you.
I think just
If we're going to expand the budget, he has to come to the board and explain why he wants to do it.
Oh.
So I'm not promising there will be more money. I'm saying that the board will look at it.
All right, thank you.
there are players that Derek will want out. That's natural. And will, football's a game of opinion. I mean, I think Derek brought 11 in the summer, but the one of the questions I've heard rumoured that we were going to be asked related to, the changes in the squad every summer. You can't keep bringing 11 players in each summer. It takes time for the team to settle down. It happened last year. We got away with it. This year it's proving more difficult. But as Simon has said, every case is decided on its merits. Most of the players that we signed this summer are on 2-year contracts because Derek wanted them to have 2-year contracts. He wants to build stability. In an ideal situation, in the summer, it's far better to do your transfer business in the summer because you're hostages to fortune in January. You look at the inflated prices that people are paying in January, and that filters down the league. But I think gradually, Derek has a plan. He's very methodical in everything he does. And I think you will find next summer there'll be fewer players coming in because he'll have more of a settled squad, and that's got to bode well for the future. But the other point you've got to remember is as well, it's not, we love to go and spend £1 million on this player or £1 million on that player. We can only spend 55% of our total revenues on player wages through the Football League regulations. So just bear that in mind. It's not a case of, right, even if Derek wanted to sign a player, then unless somebody writes a cheque out and puts it in as what we call now technically fortune money, if we're up to the limit on the 55%, it's very difficult unless you wheel and deal and get some out to get off the wage bill to bring other players in. But as Simon says, every decision, every request from Derek is deliberated on and judged on its merits. We want to see better players in. You do. We all want to. But it is a business, but we are governed by that 55% of turnover. So to a certain degree, it's you're walking on a tightrope. There's a little bit of flexibility in it at the moment, but not a lot. So it's twofold. The cash that Derek brings in, he can reinvest. And the other point is there may be one or two players that genuinely he doesn't want in his squad, so they'll go.
Well, I think of it. Will there be the avenue for Derek Adams to go in for free agents or loan players, like from because previous years it's always been one of the Cardiff manager kind of allowed some of the players to come down on loan that way. Will there be a chance again, to see if there's a chance of some players coming in that way?
Yeah, I think one of the things that Derek says is that a lot of the Premier League clubs, Championship clubs that have players they want to take a look at early in the season are more prepared to loan them out in the January transfer window. Yeah. Sorry, knows more about football. I think in past years we've had people come in, on loan in January. So that's really Derek. That's where Derek works hard in December, making the plans, and then with Zach Newton at the club executing in January. Yeah.
Good evening, gents. Thank you for coming. Really appreciate it. My question would be just based on what Michael said about stability. Would it not have been more prudent to offer players that left last season, like Sonny Bradley and Oscar Farrellcloud, better contracts, who led us to a 7th place finish, an 8th place finish, or whatever it was last season, than sort of rip that apart and spend more money on more players that haven't performed as well? Thank you, by the way.
Yeah, pleasure. Yeah, it's always a decision that you try to make. You know, we were sorry to lose Sonny. We were sorry to lose Oscar. We made an offer to Sonny that I think was generous. Certainly, Derek thinks it was a generous offer, and Sonny, you know, has obviously gone on to maintain a regular place in Luton's squad at a much higher price. We would have had instability in our player wage structure if, you know, we kind of turned that upside down for Sonny. But, you know, I'm sorry that he's gone. When it comes to Oscar, again, we made him what we thought was a good offer. You know, Oscar was great when he was here. Again, you know, I mean, look, as a fan, he was seeing Oscar rampage down the right was fantastic. Oscar is absolutely genuine that it wasn't just about money. So we did make him what we thought was a good offer for a player of his caliber, stature, and so on. Oscar really did want to go and ply his trade in Europe. And, you know, one of my views about English football is that not enough English players. I mean, it's nice to see a few youngsters come back from the Bundesliga now and make it in the English team. You know, I regret that more young English players don't go into Europe. So, you know, I was a bit conflicted actually. I kind of was very glad for Oscar that, you know, he managed to make it to Europe, but obviously sorry that he left us. I mean, it wasn't going to be just money with Oscar. I should say here, just by way of even more kind of elaboration, it's interesting. You know, we've had a bunch of players come in. You know, they don't all work out. You know, you obviously don't get that 100% right. The players that have left, not many of them have been very successful. I mean, we've been actually pretty good at letting people go, and Sonny, I think, is a bit of an exception. But you know, you look at players like Ben Purrington that we got money for, who, you know, I was very sorry to see him leave. I thought he was going to be a local lad making it big at the club for decades. But you know, he's out on loan with Wickham now. Yeah, Wimbledon. You look at Jake Jervis that we got money for. You know, Jake played a number of times for us, scored more goals I think than Graham. Almost as many goals as Graham, I think, and now, you know, he's languishing. So we've actually been pretty good at letting players go. You know, and Sonny's the one that got away.
I can talk about Sonny a little bit more because I was actually at Crawley when he came to Crawley, so I know him quite well. Yes, he went to Luton for considerably more money than we offered him, but he also wanted to move back towards Hull, where he was born. There's another factor to this as well, that this club, and Derek is a firm believer on this, is built on team spirit. And he has to look round the dressing room at every one of us, or every one of you, and be honest with them. And the trouble is, I think there was an instance, like James Brent told me this story when I met him in the summer, that he actually said to Derek, there's this, it doesn't matter who the player is, there's this player here. If you really want him, we'll try and get him for you. And the money was appreciably more than we were paying to any other player. Now, Derek is highly principled in this. He has to walk into that dressing room every day and look those players in the eye and be truthful with them. And he knew that the type of money that this player was asking for, he may have got it eventually, probably did. But Derek said, I've got 3 or 4 other players in this team who I consider to be as good and as worthy of that type of money, and I know we can't pay it, so I'm not signing him. Now, there's a lot to be said for that, because over the years, whether it's under Paul Sturrock or Ian Holloway, a lot of the success that we've achieved has been based on team spirit. It's a lovely place to live. People come down here and stay down here. But it's not always possible. You know, you can throw money at something, it doesn't guarantee your success. We can go in the January window and put £500,000 into a project, and it does not guarantee us, so word I seldom use, guarantee that we were going to be better off than we are now. You hope you would be, if your recruitment's right, but there's more to managing a football club than just throwing money at it. It's knowing he's got 23, 24 players. You know, only 11 can play every week, another 7 are on the bench, so he's got 4 or 5 who are on the fringes. Maybe some of those will go. But he puts a great store on being able to, being truthful and trustworthy with his players, that he knew if he'd signed that player, he could not have looked 3 or 4 other players in the eye and let them stay on the existing contracts. So that's the type of manager you're dealing with. You know, he's truthful, he's honest, he's hard-working. He's done a lot for this club, hasn't he, since he's been here? Okay, he's going through a rough patch at the moment. We all are. None of us like it being where we are. But he's got principles. And there are not many managers, I can tell you. He's the 31st I've worked with. And he's probably as highly principled as the top 3 or 4 that I've worked with. So, you know, yes, he'll be criticised because the results aren't great. But there's more to it than that. This guy's a good guy. He knows it, he cares, and he's honest with his players.
Maybe we could broaden the discussion out to include questions about the first team. And a couple of questions I'm going to roll together here from emails. How loyal are you to the manager? And can you confirm if the club retains any break clause in his contract, performance-related or otherwise?
2 questions. That's 2 questions. On whether there's a break clause in his contract, I'm just simply not going to comment. You know, that's a private relationship between the club and an employee, and I think it would be unfair of us to reveal those details. It may even be illegal for us to reveal those details. I will say that Derek remains the manager of this club because we think he's the right man for the job, not for financial reasons. So that really answers the first question, are we loyal to Derek? And the answer is yes. And I'm personally loyal to Derek, and the board is collectively loyal to Derek. Michael hinted at some of the reasons, so I'll just elaborate again a little bit. Firstly, let's just remember that I think it's true that he's the 3rd most successful manager in terms of win-loss ratio in Argyle's history. We've finished under his management higher every season that he's been here. He's the same person, in case you wondered, as he was last year, as he was 2 years ago, and as he was 3 years ago. So his skills are, if anything, better. So we think he's a good manager. We think he's the right man for the job of managing our first team, despite current results. But more than that, we think he's the right guy to be head of football at Plymouth Argyle. And when we gave him a 5-year contract, it wasn't just because we finished 7th in League One. It was because of some of the things that Michael hinted at. You know, he's hardworking, he's honest, he's ethical, he's principled, but above all, he has extraordinarily high standards of behaviour by his players, high standards on the pitch, despite current results, but also high standards of everybody around him in the club. And one of our goals, as you know, I hope has become clear, is that we need to improve standards at this club. So Derek leads in that regard. And so, you know, for us, it's obviously the driving issue is results, but Derek has given us results. But it's also that he's part of us shifting the culture here at Argyle towards, you know, much higher standards, both today and in the future. So we are very loyal to Derek. Yeah. So, and can I say, I think Derek is loyal to us. You'd have to ask him, but you know, Derek. You know, loyalty goes 2 ways, and you know, it's only 18 months ago that everybody was terrified that Derek was going to leave us and be poached, and you know, Derek is still here. So, it does go both ways. It's a very, very good relationship.
Thank you, Simon. Any more questions about what might be first team matters, playing matters, squad matters? Okay, well, we've reached the title that says miscellaneous on my list here, which means it's a free for all. I think. Any other questions you'd like to ask these gentlemen? I'll throw one in. What we have from email. What action, if any, will you take to ensure that younger fans, the future of the Green Army, are able to afford to attend matches on a regular basis?
I think those of you who look at our pricing structure, yes, you can always say you can do more, but this season we've introduced a number of initiatives where it's been kids for £1. The thing we've got to balance here, and most of you, I would think, looking around the room, will be season ticket holders. What we've got to ensure is that when you buy a season ticket during the early bird price, whatever offers we make generally, you're still getting the best deal in town. That's a commitment we make. So we have to be mindful of that. If you look at being an under 18, we say juvenile price is under 18. A lot of clubs make that 16. Some clubs do 12. £96. You can buy a season ticket anywhere in this ground for 23 games, and by my maths, that's about £4.10 each for every game. Very rarely will you get that any cheaper on a regular basis. I think what we've got to do, though, we're not complacent about this. We want to grow the attendances. All right, results are key to it. We know that. But also the next generation of supporters. But I don't think, a £96 season ticket, which you could pay for by instalments if you wanted to, I think that's exceptionally good value for youngsters. The other fact that remains true to this day is that 50% of all the season tickets that we sell are sold at a concessionary rate, whether it be to youngsters, seniors, disabled supporters, 50%. So when you see the headline figures, just remember, whether you're paying £300-400 for your season ticket, 50% of every ticket that we sell, even on a match day, they're sold at concessionary rates because of the age profile of the supporters in this area of the country. But yes, we'll do more. We're just introducing an initiative now with the DJM ongoing, and we'll see the fruits of that, I'm certain, next season. So Jamie Absley's doing a really good job, and Mark Lovell through the community scheme. So yes, we are actively trying to encourage youngsters, because we know the more youngsters that will come, they'll bring their mum and dads along, the secondary spends will go up, so there are hidden benefits to it. We'd love to see this stadium full, buzzing every match. You look round now on a match day, and the atmosphere for a club in our situation, the visiting directors who come are amazed by it. Nick is doing a fantastic job with all the flags around the ground. It all adds to the excitement, to the enjoyment of coming to Home Park. Yes, we all want to win. If we lose in the last minute, we're all a bunch of idiots. If we win in the last minute, nobody gives a damn about it, do they? It's all results driven. But the club has got to look at every aspect of this. And driving youngsters through, it's difficult because the DGM is one of the best football youth leagues in the country in terms of participation. Our relationship with them will become stronger season by season. And we would hope next season we have at least 5 to 6 DGM teams here every match. So yes, we have to have an attractive price, but we can't give it away. We're talking here about spending money on players, building new stands, increasing the capacity beyond 18,000. For what reason? It doesn't. I haven't been round yet in Plymouth and seen any money growing on trees. It doesn't happen, does it? We have to be prudent, but we want to see more people here. But I honestly don't think, for the juvenile point of view, I think our pricing's just about right. Yes, you can say you can give it away free. If I drop prices by 50%, I'm not going to get 50% more people through the gate. It just does not work. So we have to be competitive. We're playing against clubs, you know, like Luton, like Bristol's Rovers. You know, they probably get similar gates to us, maybe slightly more, but their pricing's higher than ours. So we've got to make sure we're competitive everywhere we go. And you won't thank us. We could drop our prices and we would reduce the player budget and everything, and we get criticised for that. But generally, I think you all know, as well as I do, because you know more about the club than I ever will, our pricing's not bad. When you go to away games and look at the prices other clubs charge, we're about right, you know. So I'm not getting held up about that.
Michael's pricing, the pricing may be not bad, but Michael's maths, as he said, is terrible. If you drop your prices by 50%, your attendance has got to go up by 100%. He's not in charge of the budget. There's a wider issue, and it comes down to, you know, what I was, you know, saying about the use of Higher Home Park. We really want this to be an attractive afternoon out for people who are not at the moment passionate about either Argyle or maybe even football. And I know some of you will hate this, Ian, but I want to attract people who just want to come to half a dozen games a year because it's a good afternoon out and can compete with any other activity either at home or in Plymouth. And that means paying attention to some of the details. No, only a passionate fan, thank you, and I apologise, is going to be prepared to sit in a puddle to watch Argyle. So we've got to make, you know, you can help. We're going to make casual fans welcome here, the kind of people who come to Argyle because they know that we are a good club, they know what we do in the community, they feel good about their local club, and they want to go and support it from time to time. Maybe they're not the kind of passionate fan who is going to be prepared to buy a season ticket, is going to be prepared to travel all over the country. But I want Argyle to be recognised as a good club much more widely than it is now. You know, in Plymouth we have, you know, 10,000 people who come from, you know, Devon and mostly Cornwall, or Devon, I don't mean they're mostly coming from Cornwall, people who come mostly from Devon and Cornwall. But, you know, the amount of people as a percentage of the population that we attract is terrible. So, you know, we are a club that's mostly supported by die-hard fans, and for that I thank you greatly. But if we're going to get it up to anywhere near 18,000, we need to be able to make it an attractive place to be at appropriate prices for everybody who just wants a good afternoon out. So please stop calling them plastics.
Michael, we were just talking about looking after fans there, and I gather you've brought something along with you which will demonstrate to the people here how we're looking after...
How do you know what I've got in my bag?
Well, I might have spoken to you earlier about
it's to do with autism, which is something, you know, something very close to a lot of our hearts. When I was at Chesterfield, they had a fantastic community scheme there. You know, they had a sensory room and everything. It was fantastic. And Mark Lovell and his team, and, you know, when it comes to marketing, I think you can say, well, the two major features are a winning team helps and a thriving community scheme. And we are very, very lucky with Mark Lovell and his team. They are, without doubt, one of the top operators in the community field anywhere in this country. Now, there was an issue about autism, and we will be, by March, one of the few clubs that can say they are autistic friendly, i.e. if you suffer with autism, you can come to this ground in the certain knowledge that you're going to enjoy it. Now, when I say that, you probably thought I brought my sandwiches with me, but I'm not. It's not big enough, this one, Simon, for that. No. Yeah. What we plan to do, and this is just one facet of it, you know, our ability count team, you know, our teams that we have on a Wednesday night at Managerial. Fantastic advert for this football club as a caring club, an inclusive club. But if you suffer with autism, then you'll receive from us basically a roadmap of the experience of being in Home Park to put your mind at rest, because we can't think like an autistic child can. Thankfully, we don't have that issue, but thousands and thousands of young children and adults suffer with autism. But they'll receive a roadmap which shows them about the Argyle experience coming in, where they're car parking, which turnstiles they go to. And also, this is the genie in the lamp. Everyone who comes will be given one of these headsets, earmuffs. Because obviously one of the problems with autism is, the sound, the level of sound, it affects them. So when they come here, they'll get their own goodie bag, which will be full of gifts from Plymouth Argyle Football Club about the history, what they do when they come to the ground. We'll give a talk through as well on a cassette to their parents, but also, just as a gift, they'll receive earmuffs, which they can wear at the game. So I think the first 3 clubs in the country to have achieved this award will be Oldham, Bournemouth and Argyle. This is from March. So it's unfortunate he's not here tonight, but if you ever meet Mark Lovell and his team, any of his team, these are fantastic ambassadors for your football club. Truly, they are magnificent people. So if you see them in the street, you see any of the coaches walking around here, just tap them on the shoulder and say thank you, because it means a lot to them.
I think we've kept the community trust's light under a bushel, and we will be promoting it more aggressively over the next couple of years. I'm known on one of the fan sites, I believe, as Community Sigh, because I care about the role that Argyle plays in the community, and I'm completely unashamed about it. This is a club. I want it to be more than a club. So I do want it to be more than just about first team football. I'm a fan as well, so I care deeply about success on the field. But as I look around here, I can see that some of you are maybe no longer in your 30s and 40s. So I know that you've been Argyle fans for decades. And there's a reason why you're Argyle fans for decades, and it's clearly not because we're leading the Premier League in goals scored and goals against. So, that is what we have to impress on everybody in the Southwest, that Argyle is more than just a club, more than just a first team, that it really is a club that serves its community, and we can make them welcome at Home Park, and then we'll fill the ground, and then we can spend more on players.
Good evening, gents. Thank you for coming. This is a question about travel. Obviously, some of the travel expenses, like, for example, Fleetwood came down here for 23 quid. We'd be going up there for, probably about 30 quid. What's the policy on that? I know it's 2 different clubs, but there's the expenses.
We appreciate everybody who goes away to support the club, but we want more to go. What we do commit to is we will run a coach to every away game, come what may. I stand corrected once this season, where I think it was Newport away, where we had 1 or 2 supporters who wanted to travel. So it was foolhardy of us to put a coach on, so we arranged independent travel for them to go to the game. So we make a commitment to do that. When we look at the coach, we always assume there's going to be, say, a 60 or 70% uptake on it. We'll always commit to 1 coach. Invariably, we run 2, and the second coach may be only half full. So we even the prices out. We do not make a profit out of the travel to the away game, but what we do is ensure and guarantee, and that's again not the word I like using very often, that come what may, we will get you there if you want to get there. So I can't talk for Fleetwood, but I know for a fact that our prices through Citybus are quite competitive, but we look at it holistically over the season, and we take a gamble that we will run a coach to every game. We'd love to run two. We'll run the second coach even if it's half full. But the prices that we charge balance out. So maybe we don't make any money. We don't want to make money, but we intentionally don't want to lose money if we can afford it. So that's all I can say about the coach. But I think on behalf of everybody at the club, for all those who travel, I mean, we had at Shrewsbury, it was a fantastic support. The flags, the noise they created, okay, it was disappointing what they were watching on that particular night. But this season, I think we're the second best supported team away from home anywhere in this division. Fantastic. It is truly fantastic. So thank you all for doing that. But, you know, we don't make money out of it. We can always talk about, can we do it cheaper? We can do it cheaper. We need to run and ensure that the coaches, and I know there's been one or two instances this year where we've had one or two problems with coaches, but generally I think our prices are fair and reflect the fact that we want as many of you at the away games as possible supporting Derek and the players.
Do you want to talk a bit more generally about pricing in the ground? I know it's been I'm not sure it's actually a question, but it could be.
Well, if you in any football club, there are key issues that all supporters, and this assembly here is no different to a number of, or I would say you're wiser. You know your club. I mean, the selected few people here this evening of probably the 70, 80 of you. I wouldn't like to count the number of years that you've supported the club collectively, but it would be a fantastic testament to you. What we've got to do is, as I said earlier, we are running a business, whether we like it or not, but our core business is football. We need to make sure that we remain competitive on the field. Operationally, we run a lean, mean, professional operation of it. And when you're looking at the budget, and we probably say average 10,000, we have to set off and try and balance the books, as difficult though it is, if we're going to remain competitive. But overall, and this is where the fan assembly will get involved, because it's this type of discussion. When we come to talk about season ticket prices and match prices, the fan assembly will play an integral part in those discussions, because we want to take sound bites from all different people, whether it's youngsters, whether it's senior citizens, whether you sit in the barn park. There'll be representatives of all sections of our support and all demographics. So it's an emotional issue, because most people who support a football team, it's quite simple. You want to come along and watch your team play football in your stadium at a reasonable price with decent facilities, and go away, ideally seeing us win, but you feel you've been treated properly from the moment you come into the ground. And I know the stewards take some criticism, but I think generally most of our stewards do an excellent job, but we can improve. The matchday experience has got to be special. And if you said to me, what club would you model yourself on? I'd say Norwich. Every time, Norwich. Because if you look at the variance, they've gone up, but they've gone like a yo-yo. Their core support is 22, 23,000. We've got 1.9 million people within an hour and a half drive time of this great city. And it's our job to make sure to waken them up. There's something special happening at Argyle. And the prices, when we come to, I think we need to do more, as we said earlier, about attracting youngsters. I think we need to do slightly more as well at the very end to reward years of loyalty that many of you have put into this club. Because if you've had been a season ticket holder since the early 50s, just imagine how much money you've invested into this football club over a period of time. All right, you've had the highs and the lows, but the fan assembly will be discussing things like that with the board over pricing. And we want to be competitive, but we want to be attractive as well. And we want to open our doors to as many sections of the support and the community as possible. That's important. But the fact remains, you would rightly criticise us if we didn't run the business prudently. Because go back 8 years and what happened? Never again, people said, must that happen. And it won't under this watch, I can assure you. But, you know, during my fan surgeries, I expected that to be a topic. And I've had one instance where the issue of ticket prices has been raised. It can't be, you know, high on the agenda with a lot of people. It may be with the people who aren't here when we want them to come here. But generally, I think our pricing's pretty fair.
What about the pricing of, you know, beer, cup of tea, pasties and so on?
Yeah, well, we've started on that. I mean, we have a captive audience here. I think 3 weeks ago, we reduced the price of hot drinks. In the coming weeks, we're going to reduce the price of alcoholic drinks and soft drinks. So by the turn of the year, you know, again, you know, the price, it's about £1.50 a head spend from people generally. If we cut that, we know what the margins are. We've got to make, we can get criticised for not building up commercial income. But if we keep then lowering prices, it becomes doubly difficult. Because, yes, you can go and buy a Mars bar up the road at Morrison's cheaper than you can buy it here. You can buy a pint, you know, cheaper at the Brit probably than you can here, because they buy, like most Witherspoon people, they buy it very cheap and have a limited shelf life over the weekend. But we have reduced the hot drink prices. We are going to reduce the prices on alcohol. We are going to reduce the prices on soft drinks early in the new year.
Just one quick one from me, if you don't mind. We thank the community, and that was a brilliant sentiment that Simon said there. Another group that I just want to thank is the Green Taverners, and just leading on to that, because I think they do a fantastic job, and they have done since 2011, is the new supporters bar. Now, I probably should have asked this in the development question, so I don't want you to fall asleep, John, but obviously there's, I believe, a lease for a certain amount of years agreed between the club and the Green Taverners. Mm-hmm. Can the club guarantee that when that lease runs out, that the new building will always remain a bar for the supporters? Thank you.
Yeah. Why? I mean, that's what it's for. I mean, I can't think what else we'd do. What else could we turn a bar for the supporters into? Tennis court? I mean, okay. I'm not going to guarantee forever, but I can't.
Just don't let Dan Macaulay buy it.
No. Oh, I see. Oh, no. No, a higher home park is not going to be student accommodation either. No, the plan is. But let me just echo your thanks to the GTs. Liam is over there. Wave, Liam. Come on. I think it's reasonable to say that the bar is actually under construction now. So I saw Steve Martin today, who told me he'd been digging holes, that they were filling up with water, but I think Gary or Liam suggested that we turn it into a sauna over the weekend. But no, they're making good progress. They're beginning to make good progress on the supporters bar. So again, I would echo any thanks that anybody in this room has for the GTs.
Mike, you went on about the fan assembly. Could you explain a bit more and who's been invited to be on that board, please?
Right. It's to give a voice to as many sections of our support as possible. It's operated successfully at one or two other clubs I know of. And we've always been quite an open club. We've got 9 supporter bodies who are the regional supporters club. We've got the Green Taverners, for instance. We've got the Senior Greens. There's a number of groups of people who represent serious numbers of supporters. So they'll be invited to sit on it. We will also be inviting individual members to represent season ticket holders in the Devonport end, the Lyndhurst, the Barn Park, the Family Zone. Youngsters under the age of 18, they will have a representative on it as well. And the plan is that 3 or 4 times a year, and our inaugural meeting will be the end of January, we will sit down, we will have an agenda on items of common interest to us all, and those minutes will be published immediately after the meeting, so everybody, it's transparent. If we want to find out the views on supporters, it's difficult sometimes, but we feel through the assembly we'll be able to reach out and get a better view from cross sections of our support as to what on key issues like pricing, like the match programme, all those different issues that you will connect with as supporters. And they'll be run on a Saturday morning on a home game. We'll start for a couple of hours at 12 o'clock till 2 o'clock. The board will be represented at each of those meetings. And I say it will, I think, help us understand what our supporters want from the club, other than winning every match possible. I think it'll be successful. Everybody I've approached so far has been positive about it. I've had confirmation from 8 of the 9 supporter club sections and organisations. There's Plymouth Pride, they're already involved in it as well. So I think it'll work, but it's like everything else. You'll only get out of it what you put into it. So we'll take it seriously, and we hope all those who've been asked to participate will take it seriously and go back to their supporters, groups, and talk about it and give us some advice. Tell us exactly what you want.
Like that group of people that you just said, total about 2,000 to 3,000. There's 5,000 other people. I certainly didn't know about this. That should be represented on there, not the same old people that continually go on these committees. How come we don't know about it?
No, well, I said there is an opportunity for season ticket holders from various sections of the ground to put their name forward, and if there's more than one name goes forward, then online there'll be a ballot for people to vote for those people. Well, no, but we've at the moment we've said it's not going to stop us communicate. We're not going to only communicate through the assembly. Our normal channels of communication, whether it be through the website, whether it be through emails, whatever, will still continue. You know, it's... Well... Mm-hmm. No, we've approached the supporter club sections as I've explained. Right, okay. Well, we'll have a word with Rick. If you don't think the yes, communications is important. It can be better. I accept that. We're not perfect, but I think it's a positive move forward. You know, but if you want to see us afterwards and talk to us about it, we'll see what we can do. But I honestly feel that the assembly is a positive step forward in, you know, understanding the views of supporters. So tell the supporters, please. Yeah. Okay. Right. Mm-hmm. What about this meeting tonight? Well, it must have been on at some point. Sure. Okay. Look,
Look, as Michael said, we could have done a better job. There's no question, and I agree that it's harder than it should be to find on our website. We talked about it in the chairman's letter that I sent out in the middle of November. We've been tweeting about it. Jane's been tweeting about it. But I completely agree. We could have done better about this meeting tonight. No question.
Will these fans forum continue alongside the new organisation?
Very much so. So the fans forum, the assembly is really taking what we think are various supporters groups and getting representatives of them to sit down at a kind of fairly concentrated meeting. These fan forums are open to everybody, and as I said, we're going to aim for 3 times a year. I hope it's going to be around when I'm here, but I live here for 110 days. Media Link, yeah, right. It's a tent. Maybe when if we're ever having these meetings in the back of the grandstand, we could have a proper Media Link. That would be great. But I like to be here. So we're not going to say in advance that they're going to be, the third Thursday of every third month, because my travel plans are not so regular. But we're really going to try very, very hard for 3 times a year.
Hi, just a couple of little questions. One is the future of the Matchday programme. And the second one, are there any plans to have a lighter green kit?
2 questions. Well, the bloke behind you is the guy who produces the Matchday programme. The current plans are for it to continue. We're quite proud of our programme. We think it's one of the better ones around, and that's certainly my belief. Something a little bit old-fashioned about a Matchday programme. I'll get it out here now that I used to collect programmes when I was a boy. My sister sold them all for about $1. I want that on the record. As to the dark green, the light green, I think I said to somebody foolishly once that I prefer the light green. The board is split on this. This massive issue. Some of us like the dark green, some of us like the light green. This year we've gone with a bit of light green in the away shirt and dark green in the home shirt. I think we will continue to make compromises on this. I'm not going to impose my view, otherwise, frankly, it would be the light green. Sorry. So, yeah, we'll just try to do the best we can and compromise year to year. But we'll have a vote here. Okay, on the count of 3, if you prefer dark green, you have to put up your right hand. And remember, on the count of 3, dark green, right hand. 1, count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay, now it's going to. No, it's not a democracy. Sorry. Now it's going to be light green. 1, 2, 3. See, split. It's completely split. Majority does not rule. It's not a democracy, I'm afraid. But you can see, look, the fan base is split. Even the demographic that we've got here tonight is split. So, I think over the last couple of years we come up with some pretty good designs. Look, and I'm an old buffer. I like the 1960s away strip that we have for the away strip. I think, actually, as an advert, we're going to start selling replicas of that in the store quite soon. So, we'll do the best we can, but views are very split on this one, and I know people get passionate about it.
Just quickly to add to that, Paul, I think what Simon said is absolutely right, and I think what we'll look to do is that we're going to retain the dark shirt, and we're going to commit to it. So the dark green will be our home colour forevermore. But I think what we'd also like to do is actually to retain the lighter green within the away kit. So that we strike the balance, but just you're speaking to a Buckter man here. But what we have done is that when you're looking at all of the new grandstand that's going up, looking at the shop and the ticket office and the grandstand, it's going to be in the darker green.
Yeah, I think you've got a better chance of sorting out Brexit before you sort out the shade of green for amongst Argyle fans.
Good one, yeah.
Just an observation initially with Michael. I know Michael, as a CEO, looks at everything in pound, shillings and pence. When we're buying our season tickets and when we're lifetime Argyle fans, speaking personally, it's an emotional investment more so than a financial investment, you know. So that's but the question I'd like to ask, changing things completely, I appreciate it's some way down the spending list. I'd like to think that we have an aspiration to be back in the championship perhaps within the next 5 years. Looking at our facilities, I know a lot of money was spent to upgrade Harper's Park, new drainage. Have we got any plans long term to do anything? I look enviously at our friends up the road who's invested a lot of money in their off-field facilities. I'm sure it's helped them to produce some of the players that they've been able to sell. That's no doubt financed that. Is there a long-term plan in the drawer somewhere to improve on Harper's Park?
Not
all-weather pitch, perhaps?
It's somewhere between a plan and an aspiration. We began to develop some thoughts about what we could do, not necessarily at Home Park, but elsewhere in the area near Home Park. It's definitely an aspiration, but we haven't got firm plans. We've looked at some projects. We've kind of sketched out some designs. You know, if there's one thing the academy wants, it's all-weather pitch to train and practice on. If there's one thing that the first team wants, you know, it's something better than Harper's Park. Though I should say, you know, just to remind everybody, we've spent quite a lot of money on Harper's Park in the last couple of years, and it's probably better now than it even was when your previous time.
Well, it was
Mike?
awful then.
Yeah, good. So it is better. But definitely an aspiration, definitely a goal. You know, there is money available from the FA for football like that. For those kind of facilities for local clubs. That's something that we've looked at. We were quite hopeful. I mean, I know the sale of Wembley is an emotional thing, but you know, there would have been a lot of money for those kind of facilities if the Wembley sale had gone ahead. Well, you know, that's what they told us. So it's an aspiration. It's definitely an aspiration. To call it a goal, you know, it depends on your definition of a goal. But we are actively making loose plans. But I don't want to make any, you know, commitments to it. But if we haven't got something like that in 10 years' time, I think, you know, there would have been a problem. And you know, frankly, when it comes to opening purse strings and so on, I'm looking carefully at Jane. You know, if we could do something like that, that's the kind of investment in the club's future that you know, I'd be much more prepared to make than, you know, than some of the other alternatives. And you're absolutely right. I was just talking to Kevin this morning. We've got Kevin Hodges at the academy about, you know, the future of the academy. We've got a board meeting on Friday at which we'll be talking. So our overall strategy for the academy is something that, you know, we're beginning to look at. And clearly, top of the list of demands for the academy is going to be better infrastructure.
Have any of you seen the new Manadon's sporting hub yet? That's through the Football in the Community scheme. Well, again, under Mark Lovell and his team, it's a fantastic opportunity there for them. You know, they've got, you know, a 3G pitch. They've got going to have a cricket pitch down there, a clubhouse, and everything. So, you know, there are other projects behind what we're achieving now, and when you speak to Derek and you speak to other people as well, yes, we'd all like to have a fantastic facility. When I was at Everton, we achieved the Finch Farm site. That's 40 acres of farmland, and it's now one of the leading centres in Europe. But, you know, when you sign players, they ask those sort of questions. What about the training facilities? Yeah. When Paul Sturrock was here, if we signed a player, we didn't bring them to the stadium, because once we showed them the home team dressing room, there was not a hope in hell of us signing them. So we'd take them away somewhere, get them to sign the document, then bring them to the stadium. But, you know, that situation is going to change in the next 12 months with the refurbished grandstand. We've got the Manadon Sport Hub now as well, which is our third phase. Colin Wheatcroft's been back giving us some very sound advice. We've now appointed a new head grounds person from Torquay. He's a top man as well. So, yeah, things are happening behind the scenes to take the club forward. They might be small steps, but collectively they make this football club stronger and better. So I think that the training ground, as Simon says, might be a few years down the road, but it's not off the radar completely. Far from it.
And I think you've hit the right thing, that the return on a facility like that is partly financial, but it's much more our ability to attract players at the margin. At the margin, it's going to be something that a player will be influenced by. It's going to improve the quality of the training that Derek can give them, and so on. So it's a very attractive kind of project if we can get the proper financing.
Just quickly to add about Harper's, just quickly to add about Harper's Park, is that there's a danger that we talk it down a bit, but we have spent hundreds of thousands of pounds over the last 4 years on Harper's Park. Yeah. It's got a pitch over there now, which is better than many of the stadium pitches in the lower divisions. It's got championship standard irrigation system, and it's the best it has ever been in the history of Plymouth Argyle. Our head groundsman Martin has worked on it tirelessly over the last couple of years, and it's sometimes when we blog, when we talk about these things, I make mention of the money that's spent at the ground that people don't see, but there's hundreds of thousands of pounds have gone into it. And as I said, Martin, our head groundsman, and his team have worked tirelessly with Derek, who is a fastidious standard setter, and the facility we've got over there today is the best that it ever has been, and in terms of just being a playing surface, is an envy of many of our peers.
Going back to the colour green, for ladies, you don't seem to produce much in the club shop. From sort of being small, I find to buy new products. I find that hard to buy new products. So when used to going back in the championship years, it'd be more for women to buy. Now, unless it's pink for some, there's a lot of pink and things. I want the green.
Have you been in recently? Yeah. In the shop, yeah. Because I said that we were. That range there's a small range, isn't there? A Puma.
Yeah, that's pink and grey. It's not green.
So you prefer the green to the more, what I call the more feminine colours? I'm getting into dangerous territory here.
Yes, you are.
I'm going to get lynched.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, right. Yeah.
So when I go away, I
Fine.
wearing a green product. I'm still wearing
Fair point. Yeah.
So it's the lack of sizes in the inventory. Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
I can't wear some women can put the men's clothes on.
Yeah.
I'm a bit too small for that.
Yeah.
Fine.
You're lucky.
Okay. I'll make mention of it when I go in tomorrow morning.
Just again to add to that, though, we've talked about Jamie Yabsley, our head of marketing. Jamie sits above the retail market now, and I know that we've had conversations. Jamie and I have had conversations about that very thing. What I can say with certainty is that when the new club shop opens in the new year, when we have our grand launch, there's going to be a raft of new lines and of new merchandise, and absolutely making sure that we've got a better offering for all of our supporters, but particularly female supporters, is high on the agenda. I am certain that when you go into the new shop in the new year, you'll be pleased.
Yeah, just one question on the academy infrastructure. You say that you obviously want to develop the academy. Are we looking at more competitive leagues for our academy players to play in, so that we can actually look at bringing them through to our first team, rather than just losing them to some of the bigger boys?
Yes, Derek's got very strong views on this. Our relationship with the Peninsula League, which is changing in format at the end of the current season, will probably mean that we're not participating with that, although the community department will be having a team in it. So there's still a connection. What we will do in terms of developing players is we want the 16-year-olds to be playing in the under-18 league and the under-18s to be playing in the under-21 league. So there is a conscious decision to participate in the Central League fixtures, of which we'll have 7 or 8 a year. Also the Premier League Under-21 League. So we want to be pitching our best youngsters. It's the only way you can tell whether they're going to progress against the standard of opposition. So the Central League teams and the Under-21 Premier League teams, there'll be probably 14, 15 fixtures each year where they'll be playing against Premier League players. And that's the only true litmus test of how capable they are, because playing against local teams, you know, we will continue to have pre-season fixtures against local teams. We'll try, the community will still play against local teams because that's part of our vision and values. We want to be a community club and stretch out and in Devon and Cornwall. But from a technical point of view, the Central League fixtures and the Premier League Youth League are the two areas where our youth development players will be participating in. And hopefully, I mean, we had a few playing at Newport, didn't we, when they came through. But Derek, I think, will be looking at stretching these youngsters even further. He might allow some of them to go out on loan to get competitive league experience. So it is high on the agenda because recruitment's important, coaching's important, and giving them the opportunity is important. So if those things are right in place, then we've had a fairly productive period a few years ago when, strangely enough, we were in administration, but virtually then we had to give the players away. You know, Jack Stevens and people like that, Walton, the goalkeeper. But there are 1 or 2 youngsters now who Derek feels are ready next year of stepping up again. And it's a challenge to them. And they'll certainly be challenged more next season than they've been challenged this year. We'd all love to see, wouldn't we? Probably a third of our squad comprising of homegrown players. But at the moment, in Derek's judgment, you know, and he's the one who's responsible for it. At the moment, they're probably not quite right. The environment isn't conducive when you're struggling against a relegation battle to throw these youngsters in at the deep end, because you could be finishing somebody's career overnight if they have a really bad spell. So it's, again, we're foster parents for a short period of time. We have to look after these youngsters, and we have a responsibility to give them a platform and a pathway through to the first team football. So it will be the Central League and the Premier League Youth League that will be competing in next season.
Yeah, I was going to ask about the Superstore, when it's going to be open. You said the new year. Can you tell us when the new year is, but what sort of date you're looking at, please?
Well, I think I've been saying that for 6 months now. There's been a series of reasons as to why it hasn't opened in time. But as you've probably walked past it now, we've got shop fitters in there, we've got tickets, we've got windows going into the ticket office. It'll actually be ready for use just this side of Christmas. But what we've decided to do is to retain the current shop so that we keep the Christmas stock in there, and we operate from the current shop over Christmas, and then we're going to have a grand opening of the new shop in the new year. So and I think as it stands, what we'll probably do is keep the old shop open. So you know, we're not going to take all the stock up there. As I said, there's going to be new stock in the new shop, so it's going to be a grand opening. I can't remember the exact date, but the 16th of January. There we go, 16th of January. That would have been a quick answer, wouldn't it, if I'd known that?
Yeah, it would. My second question was around the ticket pricing. Great to hear about the concessions, etc. But as a father of 2 university students, one who's 22 and one who will be 21 in April, it's expensive, you know, 3 season tickets. A few years ago, you used to do university concessions. Is there any chance that's going to be reintroduced?
Yes. Given the population in Plymouth, I think, albeit it's dipped slightly this year, I think I'm right in saying it's 38,000 full-time students in Plymouth. You know, they're not all local people, so you've got to be mindful of the fact that they'll have allegiances elsewhere with those fancy Dans up in the Premier League. But yes, there's we should be there at Freshers Week. We should be promoting the club with all the facilities, with the community, all those sort of things. But really, the disposable income for somebody who's at 18 spending 3 years at university is not terribly great. So we've got to. I think the concessions will be extended further down the line to the 21, 22-year-olds who are honestly in full-time education, because the trouble is with these schemes where you're giving concessions, I've seen some massive older 18-year-olds in my life, and I've seen some very young-looking senior citizens. So but yes, there is an audience there that we're not really tapping into, but we will next season, as far as pricing is concerned, make it an attractive package for them to come here. They probably won't want to buy a season ticket because they'll be going home during holiday periods. I think what we might do is a half-season ticket for these people who are students. Right. Fine. Yeah. Well, we want to reach out to them, and that is price sensitive to them, but we will be introducing something next year along those lines.
Okay. Hello. Hello. I wanted to ask about the academy that you were referring to before. Firstly, they play all their home games at Newton Abbot. You're talking about the Manadon hub. Is it possible that the reserves are going to play there, or where is it they're going to play? The other thing is, we're talking about developing these youngsters who are coming through, and there was a Central League game in the week, and against Forest Green Rovers, and Greg Wild and Lionel Ainsworth scored the 2 goals. Now, it may be that they were injured, but the 2 top scorers for the reserves this season are Alex Battle with 24 goals and Alex Fletcher with 18, I think. And neither of them were even in the 16-man squad. And I just wonder how much we are encouraging these academy lads when, it seems to be the older players that are playing at that level. That was the question. So
First of all, on the pitch, as I understand it, again, the Community Trust has put that pitch in, and Plymouth Argyle is separate from the Community Trust. We have 2 people on the board, including Michael, but they operate out of our offices. They use our brand, if you like, but it is a separate organisation. And what they did in Manadon was on behalf of the public. So we can be customers of the Manadon facility, but that's about all. So we certainly can't commit to having, the under-16s, under-18s, the reserves, the ladies team playing there on a permanent basis, which is, it's kind of ironic in some ways. As to giving the younger players a chance, that's part of the question we were addressing before about what our overall long-term strategy is going to be. Alex Fletcher has had a number of games in the first team for a considerable period. Alex Battle, I don't think I can answer to. Can you?
No, I think Alex is probably one that. Sorry, I think Alex is possibly one that Derek might be receptive to going out on loan and getting some league experience. Michael Cooper might be another one. Law, the left full back. There are players, but we're getting into areas now over Derek. There might have been a very good reason why he wanted to play Greg. He might have been thinking, he might have been in his squad for the weekend and he needed to give him game time. There are, permutations that we're not aware of, and I'm certainly not going to get involved with that because Derek is very focused and he'll tell me to shove off quick if I put my nose in, and quite rightly so. But, there is a development plan, and there's a deep conversation at the moment between the academy and Derek over the future strategy, and they will then bring that to the board, because we're football people, administrators, directors, These are professional football technicians who know better than we do what is required to make a professional footballer for this club. So we'll wait for them to come and make their presentation on strategy, how the way forward. But I think Derek's at the moment looking towards more quality than quantity, because that is, but it's down to recruitment, I say coaching and opportunity. Those are the three key words in progress. But I think with Kevin, Derek is the overlord now as far as the football's concerned, in a nice way, because he knows exactly what he wants. It's a bit, for those of you who know football well, if you can imagine Dario Gradi at Crewe, for years, Dario was the only manager who could sign a boy at 13 or 14 with his parents and say, I will ensure that your son plays in my first team. Now, I'm not saying Derek's at that level at the moment, but the philosophy has got to be sound, that we want the best here. We give them the best facilities that we can provide. We give them an opportunity. And I think Derek long term would prefer, out of a squad of 22, 23, if we had 6 or 7 homegrown players, you're doing well. You look at all the clubs. If you've got a third of your squad made up of homegrown players, your academy is doing its job. If you sell them, play them, whatever, but they've got to be ready to go into there. And at the moment, possibly, they're not quite ready to go into a dogfight. And we're in a dogfight at the moment to stay in this division, because it could just ruin their careers in the future. So we have a responsibility there to look after them. But Derek's well onto this one. And within, I think, early next year, there'll be a deep discussion at board level over the future, strategy for the academy, including facilities, recruitment, every aspect of it. So,
thank you, Michael. I'm now going to give, having woefully forgotten to give Simon the opportunity to welcome everybody here, I'm now going to give him the opportunity to sum up. I think you and Michael and John will be hanging around afterwards as well, so if there are any questions that weren't asked, you could probably take them. There's always the website or Michael's surgeries or the fans assembly as well, and we'll be announcing a fans forum, next fans forum pretty soon. So Simon, would you like to?
Yep, I'd just again like to thank everybody for coming. That's 2 hours of questions, so that's great. For the people who sent in questions by email, we will write answers and post them on the web and put links to those posts on our social media platforms. So I'm not going to apologise for giving precedence to people who've come tonight, but those questions that we've had emailed in, we're very grateful for, and we will get answers to you. So I'm looking at my wife, who's looking very tired, but I desperately need a beer. So so thank you again for coming. If there's any questions, we will be hanging around, I'm sorry, love, for at least a few minutes, and you're obviously happy to answer anything else that you want to ask us one-on-one. Thanks again. And, of course, thanks for your support.